Please give a warm welcome to Professor Jeffrey Sachs.
What did you say I'm going to talk about?
Whether there can ever be a liberal international order.
Thank you. Good. I absolutely refused to hear the question before I entered the room, so that's a good topic, what kind of international order or disorder we're going to have. Thank you for having me and my wife here this evening, so I'm looking forward to a great discussion. We are in a period of huge change and very dangerous change right now. And I'm here to tell you to help lead a safe way out of this. For some reason, the generation of politicians running the world right now is not very prudent, very wise, and is not leading us to safety. We're in an extraordinarily dangerous time, and that is not intrinsic to our circumstances at all, because we could view, with the same conditions that we have, we could view our situation as wonderfully promising, exciting, a time when the whole world could be achieving very big things. We could understand, which we don't yet, that we are not in a game of who's number one or who's ahead or who runs the world. We're all blessedly stuck together on this planet, and we're all going to have pretty much the same outcome, either a good outcome or a disaster. And the old ideas that it's really important who sets the rules and really important who wins the wars are very outmoded. And they're outmoded for two fundamental reasons. One, we just can't go on with the kind of wars that we have and that threaten our very survival every day, because we are in the nuclear age and we have conflicts among nuclear powers that threaten our very survival. This is something new in history. We were, as a species, one could even say, we seem to be very prone to war, and war has been part of human existence, but things are different now. Actually, one of the wonderful lines of President John F. Kennedy and his speechwriter Theodore Sorensen, which I like so much, are his words from the inaugural address when he said, for our times are very different. We hold in our mortal hands the ability to end all forms of human poverty and all forms of human life. And that was 1961. This remains our most significant issue, which is we are so close to disaster every day because we are not properly led and because our ideas about the international order are way out of date. Now, the second reason, as I mentioned, of the two is that we're so interconnected now that the whole idea that there can be winners and losers on a completely interconnected planet really makes no sense. Maybe it made sense and it was immoral before, but now it really does not make sense to think that there's going to be a way on a planet with so much interaction every day, with complex global scale interactions and with the climate and environmental stress that is potentially disastrous for every part of the world, that somehow we're going to be able to do well while half the world is struggling to survive. And that is an old idea. In fact, one of the old ideas, quite disastrous, which actually came from England in 1798 of Thomas Malthus, who was very clever, so he posed a real problem. He got the wrong answer, but he posed a real problem. He basically said there's not enough to go around, so we're condemned to poverty, if not at all times, at least any time we are able to lift our head above poverty, we'll be driven back down to poverty by population increase, and we'll never really be able to surmount subsistence. And Charles Darwin had an aha when he read the Principles of Population and said, aha, that's where natural selection comes from. It comes from the fact that there are always more organisms than can be supported in their physical environment. And that was then taken by others further and said, well, that's our struggle for survival on this planet as human beings, and as nations against nations, or as races against races, we're in a struggle for survival. And that is social Darwinism, and its even more extreme versions. This idea is wrong, and it's wrong for understandable and identifiable reasons that would take a long time to discuss fully, but suffice it to say, two peculiar things that Malthus got wrong. He thought that richer people would have more surviving children because children would survive in a higher income context, and therefore there would always be, above subsistence, a survival rate of children that would increase the population. But what he didn't foresee was modern contraceptives and changing culture so that at higher incomes people have fewer children. In fact, they don't even have enough to replace the adult generation in the high income world. Fertility rates are now in many places, each mother having on average, or each 10 mothers having 7 daughters that will replace them in the next generation, meaning a declining population. So he didn't understand that, and he didn't understand the benefits of technological advance, because that was about to explode after 1798 in ways that he didn't envision. But the legacy of that idea is that we're in a struggle, and it's us or them. And of course, the worst horrific vision of that was Hitler's, which is that we need living room, Lebensraum, because otherwise the German Aryan people will not survive. So we need to conquer the lands of the Slavs to the east. And that was a real idea, by the way, that he picked up from German scientists who had picked it up from social Darwinists in this country, who had picked it up from Darwin, who had picked it up from Malthus. And it's actually a set of ideas. It's not just insanity. It was a set of ideas widely circulating among German social thinkers and among German scientists, in fact, in the early 1900s. Well, thank goodness it's wrong. We're not in a struggle between the US and China. There's no basis for this. We're not in any intrinsic war between the US and Russia. And Russia, by the way, despite every single thing that's said every single day, truly, really does not want more land. It's already 11 time zones. The last thing that they need or want is more land. The war is about completely different things than everything you and I read about in our newspapers every day, because our newspapers are telling us stories that ultimately come back to narratives conceived in the US Defense Department and the CIA, and that are completely bogus. So, what about this international order? The international order is extremely dangerous because we're packed to the gills with nuclear weapons. We are at a brink of environmental disaster. We are led by, to put it politely, well, I need to put it politely, but leaders who are not quite up to the challenge we face and are not properly addressing the challenge. And personally, it's a little bit of a relief for me to be here, because yesterday when I was at the Oxford Union, I could only think about Boris Johnson being president of the Oxford Union. And here I can think about Keynes being president of the Cambridge Union. I feel so much better and so much more at home in that regard, although I loved the event yesterday and Bojo wasn't there. But he was there in spirit in my remarks, because he's an example of one of the most disastrous politicians of our age, and has done a profound disservice in the world and continues to be a danger for all of us. And I don't say it lightly, and I don't say it in a partisan way. I just say it that people like that are extremely dangerous in how casual they throw around our lives. So the question, and I'll sit down in a moment so we can have a discussion, the question, could we have an international order that is peaceful, secure, ordered, improving the well-being of people around the world? The answer is absolutely yes. Is that what we have right now? The answer is absolutely not. Do we have the makings of what it could be? My answer has been, for most of my professional life, yes, we could make the United Nations actually fulfill its purpose. That's why I have devoted the last 25 years to the UN in pretty much volunteer work every day, because I think it's our best hope for making a global order that truly is what we want and need. It's not working right now. It doesn't make me cynical. It makes me worried. It makes me sad, because I think I can see why it doesn't work. It was set up in 1945 so that the great powers would have a veto, and that is certainly the single most debilitating aspect of the UN, because if we had a system where the General Assembly, as flawed as it is, actually had enforceable legal remit, if you look at the decisions of the General Assembly over the years, they're actually very, very good, and the world would be a lot better place if it were guided by that rather than by the great power vetoes. So all of this is to say, I don't think we're so far from a vision of what we could have. Of course, we just had a Summit of the Future at the UN, which put forward a lot of ideas for UN reform that are very good, so we can reform what we have. But I think the idea of an international governance system that is based on peace, sustainable development, and human rights is really